programmatic 20 years, 2 decades ago. What went wrong over the last 20 years that you're now trying to like fix it through AI? And by the way, this is our prep. No prep.
I don't know. I mean, I think arguably, if you invent something that becomes a $100 billion industry, I mean, that's not really going wrong, right? I mean, we've built an immense amount of value for a lot of people, and we've done a lot of good with programmatic. But I think the idea that that's going to be the technology stack or the way that we do things forever is probably naive. You know, if you think about, you know, the cloud, when it started 20 years ago, you know, and it's like, well, what are we going to do with the cloud? Let's just take the software that we're installing with floppy disks on our computers and let's just run that on servers in the cloud. Or we could say, let's reimagine this. Let's deliver software as a service. Let's, you know, put everything there. No one knows what the cloud is, but the way that we think about software, the way we think about things is totally different if you start from the cloud and reimagine how we do things. And I feel like AI is the same thing. So it's not that, you know, software was bad. It's just the technology of today can do so many things that you can't do if your idea is to hold browser-side auctions of rectangles with cookies. Like, that's not the problem we need to solve now, and it's not the solutions that we have available.
Well, I mean, look, we did get some things right?
Yep,
I mean,
yep.
I remember in the early days, Wenda Millard was saying, was making the analogy to pork bellies. She kept saying programmatic is going to be pork bellies. We're going to eviscerate the yield for publishers. Not true. She was conflating the fact that the only inventory that this guy could convince someone to put on his exchange in 2009 was remnant. So yes, of course it was 5 cents, 10 cents, 25 cent CPMs. But I'm like, watch, it'll mature and it'll get all of inventory. Well, here we are. I don't know where 100 billion is coming from, but like 350 billion in programmatic spend globally, and it's basically the preponderance. So I think Brian's point is key in the sense that nothing is ever a constant forever. Let's assume that we live in a dynamic marketplace where technology developments will in fact lead to huge opportunities, which properly done should expand the TAM and make everyone happier. It'll probably be a little bit of a different paradigm, maybe not a total revolution, but certainly an evolution of where we are now.
So you launched, great segue, you launched your AI LumaScape.
Yeah.
Give us the over-under on the incumbents winning versus the AI startups winning.
We launched the AI LumaScape in November, and as some have said, probably the most consequential LumaScape since the first one, 15, 16 years prior. Because we, as Brian says, we're kind of entering a new epoch, right? It feels like it's fundamentally different. And so the challenge we had, and I had a team tasked for this, for 5 months was try to figure out what companies warranted being on the AI LumaScape. By the way, a near impossible task, right? Because we can't vet everyone's technology. Yeah. And yes, I suppose the Michael Rubenstein firsthand kind of like AI first, truly like AI first or Empowered or any of these other companies, that's kind of easy. The hard part were the incumbents because they all told us we got great AI tech. And we obviously can't diligence them all, quite frankly. We had hundreds of meetings, them trying to prove their bona fides. Most of those meetings, I sat there and said, it looks like an audience dashboard. Like, what is new here? I wasn't impressed with most of them. Some were truly impressive, and then some were like amazing. So what we decided to do was we defaulted to, so fine, we'll put you on the AI LumaScape. However, with a caveat, we're going to manage this more dynamically. If you truly have AI tools and they're going to evoke a new paradigm, then it's going to show up in your financials in the form of higher operating leverage. So if your growth rate doesn't accelerate or your margins don't improve, or most importantly, revenue to FTE, if that doesn't dramatically improve as it has with Google, Meta, and AppLovin, then we're going to remove you from the AI LumaScape because it turns out it was all just bullshit. And so I'm calling 2026 the year of Jerry Maguire. Show me the money.
Wow. But so for those of us who are private, how are you going to get those numbers?
Oh, well, if you don't tell them to me, I'm taking you off. I'm going to assume you don't have them.
Noted, noted. So Brian, you launched AdCP as an industry solution. Is that, I mean, I think everyone wants to know, is that just completely self-serving, or is it like, or are you just like, the industry needs this and I'm so confident in my ability to execute that I'm just going to be the best recipient of that value?
Well, if you look back at the last 20 years, one of the saddest days of my life was the day that Yahoo bought Right Media, and all of my patents, I had 19 or 20 patents that went to Yahoo, and I couldn't use my own IP. There was a bunch of new stuff I had invented in notebooks, and they confiscated my notebooks on my desk and shipped them over to Yahoo because it was all this incredible stuff. And what's crazy is, 6 weeks later, Yahoo sent them to my house. Someone misunderstood what they were. The problem was that if I opened that box, I would be effectively using the IP that we had sold to Yahoo for $850 million. It's still in my closet. I know it's in there, obviously, but the problem, and then we saw this again.
But have you ever told that story before?
No.
Incredible. Never heard before.
I could cry right now at what I lost in that.
Tissue, please, tissue.
I might need it. But what I realized actually is that my legacy isn't going to be all the patents that then, who was running the Yahoo ad exchange after that, who didn't leverage all that IP?
Todd Teresi.
Bill?
Wise move.
Wow. Okay. I see where this is going.
Wasn't your fault. I don't think you shipped that box back to me. But if you go back to Prebid and look at the code that I wrote, the very first lines of code for Prebid Server, like that was my code that is now running on like every website in the world. If you look at the global media sustainability framework, the work that AdNet Zero and GARM and others did, that is now code and methodology that anyone can use. And I guess my concern is that if we at Scope 3 were to do all this work to figure out how to make agentic advertising function, and then we get taken out, then we're doing a huge disservice to an industry that needs innovation and development. And so I was like, well, while it's probably not in my interest to do this in the open source, it felt like the right thing to do for future me not to be sad. And my bet is this, that even if because I spent the last 6 months not working for Scope 3, I've been working for this new AdCP protocol. And in fact, I'm not even in my management meetings at Scope 3 right now because I'm spending all of my time trying to figure out how to launch this nonprofit. And the thing about that is that this is going to be a gift in a sense to the industry and to future me. My bet is though that when I go back to Scope 3 land in a couple months, that I can outbuild everybody else on top of these protocols, even though I don't own them, because I've been learning a ton by just being tactically in this. I've talked to so many companies about how they're thinking about the future of AI. Most of my advice I've gotten from Terry on this front about how AI is going to work, but other people also think about the future of AI very deeply. And so if you talk to TV companies, you talk to out-of-home companies, you talk to social companies, you talk to influencer creator companies, there's a huge amount of excitement about a new paradigm that isn't owned by Brian O'Kelly, but is owned in the commons by everyone. That is how we learn together in public.
And by the way,
Awesome. Awesome. Honestly.
Bill, your opening line really framed this, right? We programmatic, not great in the sense that it got scale, but lots and lots and lots of problems. And so when Brian called me and said, I'm doing this thing called AdCP, explained it, I still didn't fully understand it, and he said, would you participate in it? I said, 100%, because we get to get it right this time, right? It's a whole new paradigm. We congratulations, we built a really big programmatic business over the course of the last 15 years, industry I should say, but we know the flaws. And this time we're like, wow, we could fucking do it all over again. If you could ever go back, rarely do you ever get a chance to have a do-over. This is a do-over. And so the idea is, well, let's identify the things that didn't go right that first time. Let's be proactive with operators who like, not just like people phoning it in and consultants and that kind of stuff. No. People that truly understand how the technology works to say, let's figure out how to get standards and make this thing hum And if we get that right, we'll have the growth of programmatic that we had, plus without all the problems. And if we can accomplish that, holy crap. The TAM, I think we're at what, 1.14 trillion this year in digital advertising? That could double. That could double in the next 5 years, because we then have a really fast train that doesn't have like the shaky rails that we had when we first did it. Now, the only question I have is Scope 3, all about sustainability and green, and then you sort of did some SPO stuff, and now you're doing Agentic. Shouldn't you be called Scope 5?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, good. We just rebranded.
So Terry, this morning you were over at Brand Innovators,
Yes.
Doing a fireside chat with Jeff Green.
Yes.
And he doesn't really do these things.
Nope.
So my son didn't invite me to that. So can you give us like anything big came out of it? Because the underlying point of my question is, in the meetings at CES this year, it seems like every single AI startup is just trying to take a piece of Trade Desk. Like, there's an entire ecosystem just trying to take a piece of Trade Desk.
Yeah, look, for 16 years, the Trade Desk has been around, and for 15 of those years, it was the poster child for our industry. Great guy, great firm, very successful in the market.
Totally.
They actually defied the law of large numbers. The bigger they got, the faster they grew, which is rare, right? Normally you get bigger, law of large numbers suggests that your growth rate drops. And it was the envy of people in the industry, certainly their market cap, their valuation multiple, and they did extraordinarily well. They very famously eschewed doing scaled M&A, unlike my good friend Bill Wise, who, based on the Mediaocean scape, obviously has done a lot of M&A. And of course, I've been working on him for like 15 years now to try and get him to do some stuff. But here's the thing. He's hit some headwinds.
Yeah.
And oddly, and I've expressed this to him both publicly and privately, the industry is having a little bit of cognitive dissonance with Jeff. Mm-hmm. Because on one hand, he kind of holds himself out to be the savior of the open internet. Like, you could just sort of see him there with a little halo over his head. But now he's kind of being a little sharp-elbowed with respect to his partners on the supply side, calling out issues, and being rather direct. In fact, doing some of the things that he accuses Google of. Now, I asked him about that today. He said, I'm doing that out of principle because it's the right thing to do. There's some, he's not talking about nefarious bad actors and fraud. He's talking about companies that are just trying to make their next quarter and doing some things that I call shenanigans, he calls fuckery. And he's just calling that out. I'm like, right. But at the end of the day, don't you want a healthy ecosystem? Don't you need SSPs to survive? And I got him to commit twice that yes, absolutely, we need a healthy ecosystem. I need the SSPs. And I'm like, great. The other thing that he was unrepentant about, because I asked him about this walled garden versus open internet, I said, look, it's a bit of a losing battle right now, right? Because brands are just going with the easy button and buying more Meta and more Google because it's easy. How is AI going to make that better or worse? He obviously is an optimist and believes it'll be better. There's arguments on both sides. The point is, he basically has not, what's the Tom Petty song? I won't back down. He's not backing down. He is sticking to his principles. Now, I hope to bend him on the M&A thing, because I think here's a company that had growth rates in the 30s and mid-20s up until this year. Now he's in the teens, and I'm like, it's all about growth. And what most companies do when their growth rate wanes a little bit is use inorganic growth, code for M&A.
Yes. Brian, in a brave new world, if all we do from an agentic perspective is recreate DSPs, SSPs, like there's going to be shakeups. Who are the winners? Who are the losers in that shakeup?
Well, I don't think that's what we're going to do. So I don't think that's the right question. I mean, what Terry said about doubling the size of the market is what I find really interesting. The number of brands that I've talked to over the last 3 or 4 years who don't buy not just programmatic, but they don't buy the web. They don't see any point. Like they're thinking, you know, Meta, Google, YouTube, TV, I don't mean even CTV. Like there's a lot of big brands who just don't think that the web or what we think of as our world matters at all. And if you think about the opportunities, you know, if you talk about the second tier social platforms, they're demand constrained. So you have this weird world where the big brands are like, I can't find places to invest positive ROAS, and you've got these very interesting platforms and new models emerging, virtual product placements and all the influence and creator. Some of you may have tried ChatGPT, which apparently is going to have ads, right? You've got AI companions that are now selling you cars. I mean, there's a whole world out here that's not even being touched by the vast majority of what we think of as ad tech. And so to me, that's the interesting conversation. It's not, let's go talk about the programmatic supply path again. I don't care about those acronyms. I want to know is, how do we get all that untapped demand and supply to come together in ways that AI enables? This is the $500 billion opportunity for us. We are all, I mean, looking around, all of us are pretty old. Like we all, I don't see a lot of teenagers here. Like we grew up in a world where the web was the biggest revolution of our lifetimes. We grew up with the web was the most powerful, amazing thing. But kids today, and I have 2 of them, I will tell you, they're not like, I'm going to surf the web for a while, Dad, right? They don't even know what the hell that means. They think that's crazy, right? They don't even think of the internet as something. Like it's just their phone. And what I mean by that is we have to all get ourselves out of the mindset that this amazing, massive 20-year explosion of what we've seen is not the next 10 or 15 or 20 years. We have to start over and have beginner's mind here. And some people have asked me, like, why are we not taking AdCP and doing it with Tech Lab? My problem is that if you start with the people who run the legacy protocol and they say publicly, we're going to build on the old protocols. Well, that's like, I'm going to start from the web and I'm going to hope to get where all of this stuff is. We failed. None of us has figured out how to do that. We have to start from scratch and reimagine everything. So the losers to me are not, it's not like, well, there's going to be tons of money made in programmatic for the next few years. The question is just, where's the next 30, 50, 100% growth opportunity? It's sitting in this new untapped landscape that's about to explode around us, and we've got to be focused on how to solve those problems.
I couldn't agree more. And in fact, I think there's like 2 paradigms to think about in terms of how to rethink this new epoch, not with the sort of inertia mindset that Brian's referencing in terms of, well, we were doing it like this, so incrementally we're changing. Time for incremental is gone. We need to fundamentally change it around, and I think there's 2 paradigms. Number 1 is we talk a lot about the consumer experience, the funnel, managing the whole consumer experience. We only talk about it. We actually only have fucking products for paid advertising. Like it's like we talk about it, but we don't connect email. We don't connect different channels well. Attribution, cross-channel attribution sucks. So it's all happy talk, and we don't actually have built solutions and products. That, I believe, is why the walled gardens have done so well. It's not that the walled gardens are that fucking fantastic. It's just that it's cohesive. It's a closed loop on data. They can figure it. They can tell you what actually worked. We're struggling to do that in the open web, and I believe that AI has the kind of powerful technology solutions. If we can solve for some of those things, I think it becomes a massive democratizing element in favor of non-AI. Think of the walled gardens as a crude version of a good paradigm for advertising. And now, if we can do that for the open web, Brian's right. It's enormous. I don't think we're even thinking of the TAM and SAM opportunity big enough. The second element is this notion of outcomes. You've heard about performance and outcomes. A company, a mobile advertising network, a mobile gaming advertising network, launched in 2012. Who fucking cares, right? Now, today, has a market cap greater than Disney. AppLovin, of course. What they demonstrated is that it can be done. Adam Foroughi had the vision to say, if we get the paradigm right in terms of delivering performance in their instance, on a pure performance basis, all of a sudden, all bets are off. There's a great scene in the movie Snatch by Guy Ritchie when the guy goes in to rob the woman at the betting track, and she's like, all bets are off. In other words, we don't have any fucking money. The point is, all bets are off because what is AppLovin doing? They're selling money. I'll give you $1. You give me $1, I'll give you $2. Give me $1, I'll give you $2. Give me $1, I'll give you $1.99, all the way down to $1.01. And all their clients spend to the efficient frontier such that we change the nature of advertising from a discretionary expense to a cost of goods sold. And if we can do that, if we can somehow manage that elixir change, then we're selling money. And then I don't know if 2x is the right number. It might be 5x. I believe we could be on the precipice if we solve this for the open web and figure out performance and outcomes in the broad ecosystem. We could be in for the greatest growth of any 5 or 10 year period we've ever seen in any industry ever in the world in the history of the human race.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. So, Brian, you and I before were talking about how basically everyone's an ad network, and AppLovin is the most successful ad network of all time. Talk a little bit about your conversations on the AdCP side with some of the bigger boys, right? Adobe, Oracle, Netflix, and what they're thinking, right? And how do they want to participate, or do they? Because they don't necessarily need to, right? They have their own. A lot of these guys have their own infrastructure, retail media networks. If you own your own data, you can kind of control your own destiny. And then the other thing I've heard a lot at CES is that the protocol doesn't solve for trust. And how are we, so how are you thinking about enabling data, trust, and ad networks overall?
It's a lot of things. I would say that going back to the point of outcomes, one of the interesting things about Right Media was it was a performance ad network. You could buy clicks, and we would just sell you a click. And we could manage all the internal mechanism of that behind the scenes. If you wanted to buy a conversion, we could sell you a conversion. RTB broke that. You could only buy impressions. And so the cardinal flaw of RTB is that everything is sold on an impression basis. And so one of the interesting parts about what AdCP does is it says the currency is not going to be impressions. The currency is whatever you want it to be. If you want to sell days, fine. If you want to sell ROAS or money, you can sell money. Because all we're doing is managing a transaction that effectively boils down to, I'm going to give you some money, and you're going to give me some eyeballs or earlobes or AI brains or whatever you're selling me, and we're going to buy stuff from you. And so in that model, the question is actually trust changes. One reason that Right Media was a performance network was because we were like a scrappy little company no one had ever heard of. And so if we said, trust us, we've got great inventory, to Terry's point, we didn't, but we could drive performance. And so Ramsey, who was our best and only salesperson at that time, would just walk in and say, look, you don't know who I am, you will someday, but I can get you a hell of a lot of performance, right? Yeah. So all I'm saying is that model changes the trust equation. And trust has been a huge problem because we've been selling impressions, which really puts all the burden on the buyer. Yeah. You are taking all the risk. And so if those models change, if we had a protocol, a system where we could change those mechanisms so that we're actually sharing risk, if the whole world worked on clicks like it did in search, there's a different trust equation. Now we're talking about valuing clicks, which is a very different question. It's not MMM and attribution, all this crazy stuff. It's just, you sent me 500 clicks and no one actually bought anything. I don't want any more clicks, right? So that is actually built into this thesis, is that this idea of outcomes changes the model. Yeah. And then secondly, if you're a data owner, or if you think that your inventory is premium and you can add value, you don't really want to send out all this user data to buyers to bid upon or to arbitrage. If you look at some of the proprietary audience products that you can buy in some of the DSPs, they're marked up 90%. And so why would you want to take somebody else's gender or other relatively low value data point? Why don't I just do that mapping and I'm going to keep that value for myself? And so what we've heard from everyone from Netflix to social platforms to retail media networks is I can't sell my inventory programmatically. it doesn't characterize the value. It doesn't protect my core value proposition. I can't sell a bundle of an end cap and some in-store app engagement and some off-site stuff. I can't bundle on an impression. And so that's all the stuff I started with in thinking about AdCP is, let's rewind. What if the currency isn't, I have to bid in real time on an impression? Yeah. What if this is actually something where I can build a package or bundle and it changes the trust conversation dramatically?
Totally.
And that's why I'm excited about this, is because it unlocks huge opportunities that you don't get at that moment in 100 milliseconds.
So this is 100% spot on. What I talked about at the AdCP launch was this notion of, we have this construct, all data is not created equal, right? We, for whatever reason, developed the core, the base foundation currency is the impression. Big mistake, right? A brutal, stupid proxy that allows for shenanigans and fraud and viewability issues and brand safety, all this kind of stuff. And what is an impression? It's just a proxy for a viewable impression. What's a viewable impression? It's a proxy for attention, right? And then context is a proxy for audience, or audience is a proxy for context, and context is a proxy for intent. Intent being the golden elixir, the thing that actually drives outcomes. I believe we move to an LLM chat-based answers economy model, we solve two problems. Number one, we go straight to intent. The LLM doesn't need to know who you are, where you live, what gender you are. It just knows that you typed in a 25-word initial prompt and multiple after prompts that told them what you were interested in. So you're the user is volunteering the data that gives a signal as to their intent. So all of a sudden you solve that one. I also think it solves the privacy problem. Because if you read the terms of service of an LLM, when you use it, you're saying, yes, please use all this data to optimize the answer. And the answer will include ads or something that won't look like ads like today, but they'll look more like an affiliate link. The point is opt-in. It's all opt-in an LLM world. And the second thing I'll say is this notion of, you asked about trust. AdCP is about creating standards. That's a good start. Okay? Because you can't solve everything right away. I remember in 2009, John Sedlak and Omar Tawakol were up, and they were talking, Blue Kai was talking about audience solutions where they were bragging about the ability to accurately predict gender 31% of the time. I'm like, give me a fucking quarter. I can improve that by 19%. What are you talking about? Like literally, they said we can do gender, sorry, it was 32%, 32% of the time we can accurately predict gender. A flip of a coin does better. So obviously it improved over time. So I think you got to say, if your question is trust, AdCP is about standards. That's a good start. And I think this outcome stuff is really going to change the paradigm. And I think ultimately, the more we move away from proxies, the more we can get rid of notions of viewability. It doesn't matter. Bots don't make purchases. Right? Let's remember that. So the closer we get to the purchase, the closer we get to the conversion, the less noise we have. We have so much fucking noise in this industry. Yeah. Let's stop talking about all that bullshit.
Last question. I heard this week from an ad agency CEO who said our business model needs to change. And it needs to change to a more performance-based approach. Obviously not marked up labor, obviously not a percentage of spend. Terry, where do you think that goes? And does their principal business, does the ad agency become another ad network, yet another ad network?
It's already started. So if you go back, if you do a 10-year look back, okay, and let's take 4 cohorts. Agencies, independent ad tech, big ad tech, and publishers. What's happened to these cohorts in the last 10 years? Agencies, way down. They're down like 35% in the last 10 years, despite the fact that the industry is growing, is like over double, tripled probably in that 10-year time period. So they're down despite huge growth. Independent ad tech, by the way, doing great. Despite all the naysayers and the being out of favor, it's only out of favor with early stage VCs. Private equity loves ad tech. And they, by the way, KKR, storied private equity firm in their history, no better return than AppLovin. And Providence Equity, no better return at IPO than DoubleVerify. So the point is, private equity loves ad tech. So independent ad tech's done great. Obviously, big ad tech, they're up like 8 trillion in the last 10 years. So they're like crushing it, and all based on ad models. And publishers are about neutral, because the big guys are doing fine, but the small guys are hurting. And so either side is kind of suffering. And ad agencies, they're just too slow. Inertia or being stuck in these old FTE models, it clearly isn't going to work. Publicis made a bet the ranch decision in 2019 buying Epsilon. By the way, they were only at about 7 billion in market cap or 6 billion when they bought $4.6 billion, $4.5 billion for Epsilon. So it was a total bet the ranch deal. And look at them. They've now gapped out, doubled WPP, and broke out against all the others. In words, they say they're going to change to a platform. We'll see. It's a little bit of that's bullshit, a little bit of it's reality. But clearly, the agencies have not kept up. They weren't progressive. They didn't see where the puck was going, despite articles I wrote that you should have listened to. And so they're now suffering. And so they're going to have to change, or they're going to be dead. What Publicis talks about is Epsilon, Data Spine, and they've been winning all these global contracts, big wins. What they're not talking about is the proprietary trading of Publicis Media that the other side, Conversant, remember ValueClick? That's Publicis. Yep. And they're minting a fortune in that realm. They probably won't say that quite as much. Oh my God, it is not being recorded, is it?
Okay, last question. Brian, what's the next steps with AdCP, right? You sent us an email on getting involved on the TV side. What's the next steps? How can everyone get involved?
Yeah, well, the first thing is this is a community project, and so it's incredibly important to get as many people with different perspectives in the room as possible. We are starting different industry councils, we're calling them, because this has to be a vertical, the workflows of TV are very different than the workflows and needs of out-of-home or of some of these social influencer or creator platforms. Yep. And some of this is just emerging. So if you think about everything that's happening in the world of AI, conversational advertising, like we're before the beginning in some ways. And so trying to build standards that will work for something that doesn't exist yet is hard, and we'll probably get it wrong. But the more people we have in those discussions, the better. And it needs to be a lot of different kinds of people. This isn't going to be a bunch of just tech people. It's going to be folks who are looking at this from the perspective of, how does retail media going to work in a world where AI can do so many more things? Yep. And so we need futurists and we need pragmatists. And so I would just encourage anybody who's interested to lean in and participate. Everyone's welcome. I'd love to have my friends from Trade Desk join us in this process. There's some smart people there who could be great allies in this. I'd love to see Tony Katzer join in and help us understand how to build protocols for the next generation, right? But what we also need to do is prove that this works in the real world. Before Christmas, there were a handful of actual full-on agentic buys. The one I'm most excited about is one that was run with a couple of premium publishers. I think it was LG and Warner Brothers Discovery, with a buyer agent. It fully delivered on a premium TV buy, and it worked. Like, I would say it's not humans involved. We were all obsessively watching to make sure it worked. Like, I've never in years been so freaked out watching things happen without touching it. I didn't touch a single keyboard in the process, but it's like the labor of love of making this actually work. And there's another version of the protocol coming out that's going to take in a lot of this learning. There's a lot of enterprise needs, there's trust, there's brand safety, there's all kinds of things we have to bring from many, many years of building ad tech together. But that's where we go. The next 6 months, I'd say by Cannes, we're going to have the majority of major premium platforms outside maybe Meta, Google, and a couple others in the ecosystem and actually running full-scale pilots. We're going to have 50 to 100 brands. We're going to have all the holding companies and major independents. Most of them are already running experiments in different ways. So it's just like an opportunity. I'd encourage everyone to just give it a try, participate, help out, run a local meetup, do something at these industry gatherings, like just be part of it and learn and help us make different mistakes this time.
I want to echo this. It's important that everyone try and be part of solving the solution preemptively this time. So I encourage you. I think it's fantastic that this is action, right? Not words. There's too much fucking words about, well, we should do this, we should stop. What he did was he launched something, and yes, he'll step back from it because he just wants this to be open, but he's getting the ball rolling as an operator, knowing full well what operators know what needs to be fixed. I encourage the Ivy Tech Lab, I encourage everyone who's thinking proactively about a better paradigm, a better ecosystem, because it'll be way, way, way better for my M&A business.
Let's end on that. Thanks.